All right, y'all. So real quick, I want to talk about Matthew. I believe it's Matthew chapter 11. Let me just confirm that. This is very important for all of us to know. So I feel like I just had an epiphany for the last couple of weeks or days, however long I've been researching this. But something was revealed to me. Let me just confirm the passage. Let me make sure. Yeah, Matthew chapter 13, verse 11. To him that have shall be given, and he will have an abundance. Him that have not, even that which he has, will be taken. Let's say it one more time. To him that have, he shall be given more, and he will have an abundance. And to him that have not, even that which he think he has, shall be taken away. Now that sounds unfair, right? Doesn't sound fair. I remember when I studied that years ago, I read it years ago, didn't study it. It didn't make sense to me. To him that has, he'll be given more. And to the person that don't have, even the little bit they have is going to be taken away. That's not, it doesn't sound like equality there, right? Sounds like some inequality of distributions, right? So it didn't make sense to me years ago when I was a novice, so to speak, in the Bible. But as I've aged and like fine wine, I've just become so gracious. I've been graciously blessed with insights into the scriptures. And now I get it. And I've gotten it. It dawned on me, I would say probably the last couple of months. Yeah, for all these years of me studying the Bible, it really hit me what it really means. So I'm going to take some time here to extrapolate, means to draw some conclusions and to expound, to kind of like broaden the horizons in terms of interpretation. What does it mean when Jesus says, "To him that hath shall be given; to him that have not, even the little he has will be taken away"? Well, first thing you got to ask yourself is, what does it mean when it says, "To him that have"? What does he have? Right? So stay with me here because I'm going to complicate things a little bit, right? Have is a verb form of the verb to be. To be means to exist. To exist. That is the key. This is this the secret. In other passages in the Bible, it says, "To you the secret of the kingdom have been given." So this is the secret right here. The word have is the secret to the whole parable. If you can understand that word, then it all makes sense. Have is the key word. Now, here's why have is important. Have is a verb form of the verb to be. You have to be again means to exist. Be means to exist. That is so important. Exist is present, right? To exist means to be present, to be here, to be present, exist. I exist. I am here. Physically, right now, I exist. So be, have is a form of the verb to be. As, is, was, were, am, weren't, has been, have been, will be, are all forms of the verb to be. Their forms meaning conjugation. They're conjugated forms of the verb to be. And they all refer to existence, have, has, have been, past tense, still exist in the past, will be, future tense, still exist in the future. So it all has to do with existence. Have, to him that have shall be given, and he will have more and an abundance. So have is the key word. To him that have not, even that which he has shall be taken away. There are some sociological uh, instruments that I want to bring in to explain that further. Sociological, there's some psychological, there's some sociological instruments that needs to be applied for us to really grasp that, and there's some psychological aspects that need to be looked at so that we can really extrapolate. Uh, Also, there's some sciences that that orbits this Matthew chapter 11 or Matthew chapter 13 verse 11. It's called the Matthew effect, which is a sociological term coined by Robert Merton, I believe his name was, some years back. The Matthew effect, it's also known, and this is Matthew chapter 13, it's called the Matthew effect. It's also known as cumulative advantages or power law in algebra, calculus, power law, exponents. So it goes into, so this Matthew chapter 13, to him that have shall be given. It goes, I mean, it really, it expands, right? It goes far outreach than just studying into the Bible. It actually expands into psychology. It finds its way in sociological uh, interactions, economical capital, right? In economics, Matthew chapter 13 is interpreted as the rich shall get richer and the poor will get poorer. That's from a sociological application of Matthew chapter 13, verse 11. Uh, to him that have shall be given, right? Rich get richer, and to him that have not, even that which he has shall be taken away. Poor getting poorer. Success, he who has success becomes more successful. He who is impoverished becomes more impoverished. It's the same. You see, so Matthew, in terms of the sociological or economical interpretation, has found its way into our sociological hierarchies, right? Rich get richer, poor get poorer. It's the same thing. To him that have, more shall be given, he'll have an abundance. And to him that do not have, even the little he has will be taken away. So sociologically, we see it there. In psychology, we see it there as well. Psychologically, if your child begins reading at an earlier age, he will be more advanced than other students who are not privileged or given the educational benefits. So if a child has more educational benefits, he will generate more or he will advance more in educational benefits as opposed to a child who does not have those same economical educational benefits. That child will disintegrate in terms of their psychological development. Their psychological development will actually have an inverse or opposite effect, right? They will more their psychological development will be more of on a decline, right? To him that have not, even that which he has will be taken away, right? So if he doesn't have the right resources in terms of educational advancements and development, that which he has, which is his psychological or the development of the neocortex, which is a thinking brain, will actually regenerate. Right? It will regress even to him that have not, even that which he has will be taken away. We see it applied there, right? So it's found as we see it, but here is where it really, really. All right, so that was just pretty much how that's the law that Jesus spoke about. Right? That's kind of like a broad, and all-inclusive kind of like gist of the law. But here is, you ready for the mechanics, right? The mechanical operations of Matthew chapter 13, verse 11. I found it in is it physics? It could be, I found it more, let's just call it computer science. I found it in computer and physics. I found it in computer science. This Matthew chapter 13, verse 11. Here it is in computer science. Here's the machinery. This is where, for me, I found it more useful and applicable and practical, being able to apply it, right? Because if something doesn't apply, you gotta let it fly, right? If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But this is where I found how to apply this law. This is so, and this takes discipline, training, practice, etc., etc. Why? Because here in MIT or computer science, those who study engineering, that same Matthew chapter 13, verse 11 is explained this way and from the sciences, right? And the computers and those who practice. It's called in computer science, that same thing, it's called a feedback loop. Whoa, blew my mind, completely blew my mind, right? So I'm like, okay, feedback loop, right? So I'm researching, studying, and I'm studying what is a feedback loop, how does it work, what is the mechanics of a feedback loop, what is the nature, the essence of a feedback loop, and here it is. So a feedback loop is input, right? The input, uh, something in the input triggers an outcome, right? That outcome, that event, right, causes something to happen uh, to the input. Stay with me here. This is good stuff. The input being triggered by the outcome, right? no, we're gonna start it over because it's a little heavy. You have an input, right? Whatever the input may be, use your imagination. You have an input. Some input is something fed into something. So let's say, for instance, myself. Information is fed into me. So I have an input. The input is a thought. Let's say, for instance, it's a thought that has been inserted and planted into my mind. The input, uh, something in my environment triggers the input, the thought that was inserted into my mind, unbeknownst to me. So it was subliminally fed to me. Something happens outside that triggers that input, right? That thought that's been implanted in my mind. I therefore act off of the input, what's been included in my DNA, the information. I behave according to that information, whatever it may be. Uh, I act and I create the outcome of said input. Now, that outcome that I create is an event. That event, right, triggers something in the input that is already in me. The input being triggered by the event creates an outcome. Said outcome causes something to be fed back into the input, causing the input to create said outcome. Said outcome causes something to be triggered in the input. The input creates said outcome. Said outcome causes the input, something to trigger the input. The input causes me to create said outcome. Said outcome, input. Input creates said outcome. Said outcome triggers said input. And I think you guys see where I'm going. That is what's called a feedback loop in computer science. And what I just gave you was a illustration of, in a lay term, because if you use jargons relevant to science, you guys won't know what the hell I'm talking about. So I use lay language that even a 5, 6, 7 year old would understand it. So the input creates an outcome, and the outcome feeds back said input. That input creates same outcome triggers, feeds back to the input, and we have a what's called it has two terms. You have what's called a virtuous cycle, or you have a vicious cycle. Both are cyclical. One is more on the negative, the other is on the positive. Virtuous feedback loops, the word virtue by definition lets you know it's good. Vicious by definition lets you know it's bad. We now, keeping that in mind, the loop, and how I just showed you how the loop works. That loop of that's the mechanism, the machinery, the how is the law that Jesus spoke about. To him that have shall be given, and he will have more in an abundance. To him that have not, even that which he think he has shall be taken away. The person who have not, and even that which he think he has been taken away, would be someone who's trapped in what's called a vicious cycle. And what that means is the person who have not, remember the word have is vitally important to understand it. When you think of what does it mean, have means to have, so like I said, it means to exist. Whatever you have in your possession, if I have my phone right here, I have it, it's in my possession. Uh, Whatever you remember, I told you it's extended into psychology, sociological, and economical, this law. From a psychological standpoint, whatever you have in your heart, meaning the deepest, most innermost parts of your submind, the cellar, the basement to the basement of your submind, whatever you have in there is operating like the loop that I just explained to you. It is being triggered by things in your environment that is creating outcomes that is feeding back to the input, which is the whatever it is in your sub basement of your mind, which is creating those outcomes, which is feeding back to the submind, which is create, and you're trapped in what's called a vicious cycle. How does it look? Well, I can't keep money for some reason. Every time a check comes in, it just passes through my hand. I'm broke all the time. I'm check to check, and Man, I need a better job. Well, guess what? If you got a better job, you'll still have the same problem because it's not the job, it's the input output vicious cycle that you're trapped in. Feedback loop. To him that have, more shall be given. Now, it's interesting because here's the thing the word have, like I said, is the linchpin. What do you have? Whatever you have, that loop that I just explained to you is going to wrap you into that cycle. So, whatever you have, if you have anger in your heart, you're going to create more anger and in return receive more anger and create more anger and receive more anger and create more anger. And then you're going to be trapped in a vicious cycle. Unbeknownst to you, your question might be, why does this keep happening? Why can't I hold on to money? Why can't I keep a job? I keep bouncing from jobs to jobs to jobs to jobs. I get a job, I get fired. The company closes. This, that. Things keep happening that you are unstable in terms of your work, right? Your career. You're just not stable. Something keeps you. And for God's sake, I don't know why. Well, again, you're trapped in a vicious cycle of a loop that is created by yourself, right? But you don't know you're creating this loop because it's within the sub basement of the basement of the basement of your mind. So you're being subliminally fed some information that's triggering that input, which is creating the outcome, which is feeding back to the input, which is creating a set outcome, which is feeding back to the. So I go through all these different relationships. I keep meeting the same type of people. Why do I keep for some because again, this is what we would call it's still within the realm and the parameters of what we're discussing. But again, I mentioned it in the first few minutes of the video. It's called, or maybe I did, maybe I didn't. It's called also. It's also known as the uh, what is it? What is it? Preferential attachment. Preferential attachment is the same thing as the Matthew effect, which is Matthew chapter 13, verse 11. Uh, Whatever you have, preferential attachment says, if you have good credit, credit companies are going to give you more money. To him that have, more shall be given. If you have a good credit score, banks are going to give you more loan. To him that have, more shall be given. If you're already wealthy, more wealth will be given to you. To him that have, more shall be given. How do we see this in our environment? A basketball player. Do you know companies give them free stuff? Right? You and I, we have to pay for this. But if you're as an athlete, a celebrity of any kind of high profile notoriety, you're given free stuff. People who are famous tend to get free stuff. They get more fame. If you're famous, you get more fame. If you're broke, you get more broke. If you're rich, you get more riches. Rich get richer, poor get poorer. It all falls into the Matthew chapter 13, verse 11, which is also known as the Matthew effect, which is also known as preferential attachment in sociological and economical sense, in psychological terms. So in essence, I'm at the 18-minute mark. I don't want to go too long. I can go on forever with this thing because it's so powerful, right? There's so much in here to flush out and unpack. But here's the essence of it all, the gist of it all. Change what you have in here. Whatever you're holding on to in here is the input that's going to create the outcome. And the outcome will reinforce the input, which will continue to create the outcome, which will continue to reinforce the input, and you'll be trapped in a vicious cycle. How you change that is you can't change the law because the law is the law. The law doesn't bend and change for you and I. Who will wait? Right? The law out there for a red light that if you run it, you'll get a ticket or probably go to jail, whatever. It's not going to change if you're driving a Ferrari or a hoopty. I could be driving a lemon and you're driving a Lamborghini. If we both run the red light and there's a cop out there, you might be able to outrun the cop because you got a Lamborghini, but as the law, he was still enforcing on the cause. It doesn't matter. So the law is indifferent. That's my gist. How you change that is you can't change the law. What you can change is the input. You have to figure out what it is that's in the basement to the basement to the basement of your submind. And the reason why I say the basement to the basement to the basement is because a lot of times we do superficial changes, right? We do superficial Jenny Jones makeovers, right? We do these reinvention of our exterior, right? We might, whatever, right? We change our hairstyle, clothes, whatever. But all that is just superficial because everything must be changed in the basement to the basement to the basement of the basement of your subconscious mind. That's where the real issues are that are creating the outcomes that are feeding back said issues, that are creating the outcomes that are feeding back said issues. And you're trapped in a vicious loop. So what you need to do is go from being in a vicious loop to a virtuous loop because the loop works in good ways. So virtuous loop is, again, I give it to you before. If you have a good credit score, banks are going to be throwing money at you. Right now my credit score is jacked. I'm rebuilding it, right? But at one point my credit score was stellar. I was in the high sevens, almost 800. And I kid you not, every couple of days I was getting like offers for loans and credit cards and American Express. Here it is, platinum this, platinum. They throw things at you, right? So that's considered being in the virtuous loop, right? Input, I have good credit score. I outcome, banks are, and the more banks offer me, right, the better my credit, the better everything's get, more it's going to attract. It's called preferential attachment. So you start to attract more success, where success begets success. Success breeds success. To him that have, more shall be given. So have is is important. You got to understand, what do you have? What are you holding on to in your subconscious thinking? Because what you have, you're going to get more of. And there's one more thing I'm going to leave you. You got to stop wanting. Don't want anymore. When you grasp this in the science here, the science of what Jesus says, you stop wanting. Because you understand, if wanting is what you have, you're going to only get more wanting. Because that's the law. You get more of what you have. To him that have, more shall be given. If you have hatred in your heart, more hatred shall be given. If you have love in your heart, more love shall be given. If you have faith in your heart, more faith shall be given. If you have fear in your heart, more faith. Whatever you have, more shall be given. And that, I explained to you the machinery of how that works based on computer science feedback loop. So yeah, I'm at 21 minutes. I'm hungry. I'm tired. I'm just coming in from work. All right, y'all. Salute, peace. Hopefully this information is useful. Till next time, peace.